In this episode, we react to the ongoing effort in the US government to seemingly allow more toxic chemicals like glyphosate, the ingredient in herbicides like Roundup, to be introduced into people's food and water. Hello, welcome to the Call Like I See It podcast. I'm James Keys, and joining me today is a man who has been trying to warn people there is a dark side. Tunde Ogunlana. Tunde, are you ready to guide us through these muddy waters here today?
Yeah, man. I'll pick up the baton from George Lucas. Try and warn everybody.
All right. Now, recording on March 10th, 2026. And Tunde, for the past few months, it seems like we've seen the parts of the U.S. government seemingly double or even triple down on lowering barriers which restrict the use of toxic chemicals in our environment. Like a few months back, at the end of 2025, we saw the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, approve for the first time the use of a forever chemical-based pesticide, and this would be used in golf courses, on lawns, and on certain foods. And now we're seeing this big push involving executive orders, bills that are being introduced into Congress, and also arguments being made at the Supreme Court to boost the production and use of glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in herbicides like Roundup, and has been found many places around the world to cause cancer and to be very toxic to human beings. In addition to being very toxic it's supposed to be toxic to plants, but also, it supposedly has been found again in many places around the world to be toxic to human beings as well. And these efforts also involved, to increase the use and also to remove any risk, legal liability and all that kind of stuff for companies that make it, and any risk they would face if and when people get sick. So, Tunde, what is your reaction to seeing the administration and the various parts of the U.S. government approving forever chemical-based pesticides and while shielding, the makers of glyphosate from any kind of liability and making it easier for them to produce more and use more and stuff like this? How is this supposed to make America healthy?
I can't answer that last one because I think this whole conversation is going to be about explaining how this is probably not going to be that healthy for all of us. But I want to just add one thing before I directly respond. One of the crops that you forgot to mention is cotton. And I just say that because when I read that, it made me realize, just reminded me, like you said, golf courses, those of us that play golf going to breathe it in. The food, we're already used to the idea of pesticides on food. But it was just when I read that it was also being approved for use on cotton, it was a reminder that, cotton's a plant, and I'm wearing cotton right now. On my shirt is made out of cotton. And so we're going to be breathing this in, absorbing it through our skin, all that kind of stuff. So it's a reminder of how
I understood it. I understood it.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Water.
So,
yeah.
No, but that's why I just want to say that, not to distract, but it's more of, we forget, all of us, how pervasive these chemicals are. And just that they are around us at all times. And I think part of, unfortunately, where we are is that this, like many other topics, whether it be healthcare or education, has kind of gone into the political baby faces and heels and footballs, kind of back and forth as to people liking or not, the people that say the messages, but not looking at this underlying stuff. And I think, to go back directly to the question about what I think about this, I think this plays a little bit into that, where you had a lot of Americans concerned. I mean, Americans are concerned about healthcare in general. And I would say this pesticide stuff and all that is just one lane of the bigger conversation about our health in this country and what we eat and all that kind of stuff. And so this is on a lot of people's minds. And again, I think a lot of people genuinely felt that this administration coming in would do something different. Like many people have felt in their respective things that they care about, that, new administrations will make these changes that they supported that said administration for, not just this one, but any others from the past. And so I think that it's not a surprise that people are questioning this. I would say this, James, me personally, I'm not surprised, because this is another example of an American administration. I'm not even going to beat up just this one, even though this one looks like it's doing what I'm about to say on steroids a bit. but it's an example of an administration that is just siding with industry over the people that voted them in. And,
Well,
I think that's pretty much just,
well, see, and that's where, I mean, it's interesting that you end there, because where you started, was really talking about how the responsibility of the people, and kind of like, okay, people are looking at this and they've been kind of presented these things and a baby face heel kind of thing. And so you just hop on board with the baby face and you boo the heel all the time. And so therefore, maybe your decision-making process can be compromised, intentional. You can be sold a bill of goods and then feel good about it too, because you're still cheering for what you see as the good guy. I actually was looking at this where you ended, though, from the standpoint of the incentives of our system, and you said something that I just don't think is really true at this point. And you're saying that the people in office, the elected officials in office and their appointees, you said that they're siding with industry as opposed to the people that voted them in the office. And I think that we have to come to grips with the fact that the people aren't really putting these people in office. It is industry that is putting these people in office. And whether that, if you want to point to Citizens United and the decision that money is speech and corporations can have as much speech as they want, meaning they can spend as much money as they want. That wasn't the first time that money got involved in politics, though. But I think that may have tipped the scales to a point where, well, what we're seeing now is that, one, the companies that make and sell these products, if they're toxic, the company's incentive, the way our system is set up right now, isn't to make it less toxic. The company's incentive is to rig the system so that they can't be legally liable for that they won't have costs because it's toxic. They want to minimize their costs and maximize their revenue, therefore growing the profits, growing the value to shareholders and so forth. So their incentive isn't to produce a product that is more safe. It's to produce something that works, at least on a first blush, that ideally that they can patent, because a large part of the Monsanto / Bayer part of this is, yes, they make the glyphosate herbicide, but then they also make, they have patented seeds that can grow with all this stuff. To me, it's slathered in. They have plants that can be slathered in the Roundup or the herbicide and still grow. So then they sell those patented seeds and they have an exclusivity because of the patent. So they're getting it on multiple different angles, but their incentive won't be to make a safer product. It'll be to make sure that the system can't hold them accountable. Then their incentive on the other side is to say, okay, we need friendly politicians that will make it so we can sell more of this stuff, so that will make it so that we can credibly claim at some point that, hey, you got to use our stuff. If you don't use our stuff, your food supply is going to collapse. That's quite a great deal for a for-profit business, is to say, hey, if you guys want to eat, you got to keep using our product. And if it kills you, so be it. You'll die from starvation faster if you don't use our product. So we're kind of tied up in a little bit of a bind here with this, because everybody is acting from a business standpoint in line with their incentives. And so until there is more direct accountability to people, to the interests of people, to the well-being of people, then things will continue down this path. Because right now there's not a intervention in place to break the chain of, okay, corporation has a lot of money, spends a lot of money to make it so that they minimize their risk, spends a lot of money to make sure that they can maximize their sales. And then for the people's standpoint, there is no mechanism to say, hey, you need to look out for our interests too. It's kind of like we're beholden to, hey, hopefully some nice people are out there that can see all this stuff going on and still try to advocate for us. And what we're seeing is that's really trying to swim upstream.
Well, and not only that they're nice people that try to advocate for us, but they also got to check the box that somehow they're going to be able to do all that and overcome the financial windfall that they'll be fighting against, like you said, which is going to be the purse strings of industry, which have been wide open. So dare I use, James, a certain word that starts with an R, but it's not the one that my mom would be mad about if I called you that. It's going to be the word regulation. That's exactly what used to be the solution for these things, about protecting the public from, let's say, the negative incentives that may sometimes drive industry to make certain short-term decisions that help the corporation and the shareholders, but long-term decisions they may negatively affect society as a whole. So
change their calculation, basically, either by outright restricting them or by making it more costly to make harmful decisions that are harmful to people.
Yeah, and so I think that part of the journey we're on as a nation, this being one of many topics, is we're at a touch the stove moment as people in a democracy, where it seems like Americans the last 20 years or so have been complaining about everything. And there's actually a lot of agreements. There's areas where Americans agree 80% on things like, they don't like school shootings. They want to have a solution to that. They don't like the healthcare system. They want to have a solution to that. They don't like these pesticides. They want to not eat poisoned food and wear clothes that, that's going to have poison because the cotton was laced with pesticides. So these are things that we tend to majority of Americans, both left and right, baby faces and heels, all agree with. But yet we have elected officials that we keep putting in power that, like you said, because of certain parts of our system that have been deregulated and others that have been allowed to compete with the people through money, we seem to not, I don't know, maybe we got to go through this. Maybe that's why I said there's a touch the stove moment for us to really see that this is serious, that all these things that we keep saying as Americans aren't being addressed by anybody. Who's leading us.
You make a great point, because the thing is that what we're learning and what we're seeing, and we'll see how many times we have to bump our heads against this before we say, hey, maybe we need to look at how this is set up, is that if 80% of the people agree on something, it doesn't matter if one industry decides that they don't want that to be they don't want that intervention to happen. One industry, whether it be the gun lobby, whether it be the chemical and the chemical industry, company lobbies and stuff, they can say, okay, we don't care if 80% of the people want whatever is happening to stop, because we got the money, because our speech money can exceed theirs. then our elected officials are going to be responsive to the industry and not 80% of the people. So that's what I'm saying. That's the disconnect. We can't even get, because once you get to the idea of regulation, then it's like, well, how do we regulate it? What do we regulate and so forth? We can't even get really to that discussion right now, because the idea of restraining industry in places where industry doesn't want to be restrained and has the wherewithal to lobby and to work themselves into government agencies and so forth, we can't even get to that first part of the conversation, that second part of the conversation. And it's really interesting, because what we're talking, and this is the thing about it, like viscerally, this means something to me, because when we're talking about herbicides or pesticides and so forth, what we're talking about is poison, like literally. That's the whole side part about it. And so we kind of walk around in this situation where it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to spray. It's not like it's a targeted small amount, one-time thing, and where the environment's cleaned up or whatever. We're going to spray these poisons on these things that we then consume or wear, and we're going to just be like, it almost requires you to take an ostrich approach, like, okay, well, that won't affect me just because it's killing everything else. but I'll be cool. Like it's such a head in the sand type of thing to think that it's okay to spray poisons on all this stuff. And so, but again, we can't even get to a substantive discussion. Okay, like then the part about it with the forever chemicals is really crazy, because then it's like, okay, we're going to spray poisons that never degrade.
Like, well, let me jump in real quick.
Forever. And so it's like, that's the plan now. So I do want to keep us moving.
Go ahead. I can
see you chomping at the bit.
Because, I actually, you said something important. Now, this is where, to me, language is important. I just want to say this for the audience, because you blew through it, but you said that's what the side is for. And what I want to say for the audience, that's the spelling CIDE, meaning pesticide. And think about the words. Infanticide is when you kill children. Fratricide is when someone kills their brother or sister. These kind of things. So pesticide is exactly that. It's poison that kills pests. So I just want to make it clear that what you're saying is very accurate. This is poison. This is poison that many scientific studies, and let's just say all of them.
The point of it is to kill living organisms.
Correct.
And I guess we just have assumed that we're not living organisms in the same way. So if we have so much of this poison floating around us everywhere, and that we're just not going to be affected. And so
hold on. That's a whole other, because you're going to have me go in the other direction of that one, but that's a different show, seriously, because that is honestly something in our culture about that we think we're so much dominant to nature, and that we're not actually, that this whole thing isn't an ecosystem, to your point. So, but that's a that's a separate
Yeah, we
conversation
see that with the
about
greenhouse
culture. But
gas stuff as well.
yeah, that's what I mean. That just somehow these things will affect everything else, but not us. But just to finish up, I just wanted to say something before we jump to the next section, because what we're talking about is very interesting. One of the tools used for this legislation that is, or the way this is being pushed out, or executive order actually is what I should say.
Yeah, we already had the executive order's already come out.
Yeah. It's the Defense Production Act of 1950. That's what's being used as the excuse for this. Part of it is that along with glyphosate is phosphorus. That's being said as a national security issue. Phosphorus, and this is where things are connected. Phosphorus is used to make bombs. There's something called white phosphorus, all that. So my point is that right now, as we're recording this, we've been spending our munitions this past year. We got, right now as we speak, a military operation, special operation. I don't know if we're supposed to call it a war in Iran. But remember, we've been shooting missiles in Nigeria, all over the world. So part of this is, I kept thinking of a president who reminded us 10 years after the Defense Production Act was legislated. In 1960, his name was Dwight Eisenhower. And he warned us of the military-industrial complex. And my point is that I think now what we're looking at, there's a food industrial complex, there's a tech industrial complex. So what's happened is since his warning in 1960, these kind of shadow, I don't even know what to call them, but these shadow pockets of industry and government colluding with the money seem to have only grown. And I think that explains a bit what we talked earlier of why Americans seem always unhappy. That we have all of these shared concerns that if you look at it as 75% plus on many of them, that we share these concerns. But no matter who we elect into office, we don't see a change. And I think it's, and that's what I mean. Maybe this was our touch the stove moment, that we now have an administration that's kind of ripped the veneer off and said, hey, industry, if you just pay us, we'll let you do whatever you want.
Well, and that was happening already. It might be helpful now that we can actually, the way that they're operating right now is very transparent. Like we can see the lobbyists in there writing the regulation and so forth, and we can see the quid pro quo happening, and so maybe more people will wake up and recognize that again, it's because these industrial complexes rise up because it's industry that makes the decisions, or that puts the people in office, not the people. The people are given a lot of times a couple of choices, but the little known fact is that the lobbyists are lobbying both sides at all times.
Because weren't we told? But weren't we told that there was a? But wait a second. Let me just say this: we were told that there were a secret group of unelected people, right? That we needed to get out of the government, and now here we go again. These unelected lobbyists and all that
they got more control now than ever.
Exactly. That's
it's interesting that warning was actually, hey, this is what's really going on. But instead of it being hidden, I'm going to make it public and actually get more money out of it myself. I'm going to make it fully potent. But no, I think
we touched the stove. We touched the stove.
Real quick. Do you think now part of the current administration, part of that rode in on the momentum and with the support of people who claim to want to make America healthy? Like they say, oh yeah, we want to get rid of chemicals in our food supply and in our soil and in our water and all that. We want to, all these different things. They're so worried about vaccines and all this other stuff that they're worried about. And so part of this administration at least held themselves out as saying, hey, like whether it be through Robert Kennedy or whatever, like, hey, we're going to try to fulfill some of this promise. Do you think those people would be justified in feeling betrayed with how things have unfolded? I mean, we're just in the first year and a couple months of the administration, and it hasn't been status quo. It's been gone the other way. It's been, hey, we're going to make things, we're going to get more toxic chemicals in. Do you think that, do you think they have they'd be justified in feeling betrayed here?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair to them, yes. Could I sit here and criticize them for being naive, not seeing what I saw, that a lot of things were BS coming into this and all that? But I mean, look, to be fair to them, I think that there's a lot of people that genuinely are concerned about these health issues and the greater things like environment, pollution, things like that. And I'm gonna read here from one of the articles that I know we're going to cite as our source material. It says last May. That would be May of 2025, not even a year ago from our recording this. Kennedy, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, issued a 69-page report. So it wasn't short. It was actually, must have been a lot of scientific research in it, titled, quote, "Making Our Children Healthy Again," in which he specifically called out glyphosate as a chief concern. The report said glyphosate caused possible health effects such as reproductive and developmental disorders and cancers, liver inflammation, metabolic disturbances. My point is, so it's kind of like the book we did some time ago. It was all a lie. That's what I thought of, is that maybe Kennedy's genuine, maybe he's not, I don't know, but this administration doesn't really care. Bayer, the company that bought Monsanto, which stands to lose $7.25 billion in a class action lawsuit about this stuff, in terms of making people sick with these forever
hurting
chemicals.
People. Exactly.
Making them sick. I believe they paid $9 million in lobbying, is what I heard. And that made it to the president. He signed an executive order. So again, we can see the incentive of industry. If I'm Bayer, I'd rather pay $9 million than $7.25 billion. So, that's the question. What are we going to do about it as Americans? Are we going to let the next guy tell us that the Haitians are eating our cats and dogs and totally forget about all this important stuff that we seem to care about? That's what I mean. I'm realizing, James. Yeah.
But that's wrong, though, because this is we're talking about people who these aren't people that were distracted by some side issue. They thought that the people who they're the people who are concerned about being, about trying to make the world less toxic, which I would consider myself that kind of person. They were told, it wasn't that they were distracted with some side issue. They were told, hey, we're going to work on this for you, and so now they're not, obviously it's going the other way, what I'm saying? So I don't think this is an issue where you can point to a distraction of something happening, some claim in Springfield, Ohio.
I'm going to be nice and not ask someone like you to tell me, well, since you believe in all that, how come you didn't think that?
Well, I'm glad you say that, because here's why. I'm not going to be nice. I'm not going to be nice because I think that you have no reason to feel justified, or you're not justified to feel like you've been betrayed. If you make a deal with the devil, someone who, I tell my kids this, if you see someone lie to other people, then you cannot walk around thinking they won't lie to you. They just do that to other people. They wouldn't lie to me. They're only going to tell me the truth. But all these other people, those other suckers,
they're going to deport those other people.
They believe they're all getting lied to. If you see someone who is persistently dishonest and they tell you something, you cannot believe it. If you believe it, it's your bad. It's not you're not betrayed if the devil tricks you. If the devil lies to you and doesn't do something because the devil came in, you knew who he was. You know what I'm saying? And so if this was a situation where a person who was earnest and had this track record of honesty and consistency and so forth, and they came in, if it was Dwight Eisenhower who came in and said, hey, this is what we're going to accomplish, this is what we're going to do, here's what I got for you, and then that person flips and does some dance for industry in exchange for money, then it's I get it. You're definitely justified in feeling betrayed there. But this is we got the slipperiest people that have ever been in government. They openly court bribes and, hey, give me a plane and I'll give you this. And they openly do this. And so if you're going to make a deal with that person and say, hey, this person's going to get my back once I throw my support behind them. And once I throw my support behind them, I don't really have any say anymore. I don't have ongoing leverage. They just got it at that point. If you buy that person and put that person in, then you get whatever happens to you after that. You don't, it's not a thing where you put your faith in someone who has a track record of being honest and measured. You put your track record in someone who deceives people all the time, pretty transparently. So no, if you feel betrayed, it's on you. And you need to learn and be better as far as the kind of people you put your trust in. Because again, it's a lesson for children. If people lie to other people, they will lie to you. Stop trying to act like that you're so special that they won't lie to you. All you got is a chuckle.
That's tough advice, man. Stop.
It is.
Stop acting like they won't lie to you. Hey, man, it's sad because. Nah, man, it's sad because I feel bad for people because it's kind of like Santa Claus and that kind of stuff. People do wish, honestly, man. Adults. This is why people play the lotto, right? They do wish that somebody just comes. That's why religion never fails and is still popular after all these thousands of years, right? People want somebody to come and create a miracle and just fix it. And And that's why I said it's. I guess
But see, here,
I'm trying to be glass
totally
half full.
dishonest people will promise you miracles. Honest person will be like, "Oh, I don't know if I can deliver that." Yada yada yada, and you're like, "Oh, screw that person." But then the dishonest person is like, "Yeah, I'll fix everything. I'll fix it all in one day. No big deal." And that's
why I love. That's why I love using the full term of confidence men, not just the short one, right? Like not just con men, but they're confidence men. They actually come in with confidence, and they make you feel confident that they're for real, and then they disappoint you. And that's
it's the story as old as time, man. That's.
But let me ask you a question, man, because I know we're kind of on the home stretch here of this discussion. One of the things that's kind of intrigued me as we were even preparing was because I'm looking at the other side, like, all right, so the people who are pushing this through, the administration, what are they saying? And so I wanted to kind of find some, who thinks this is good? And obviously the administration is going to put some positive spin on something they're doing. So they're saying the arguments, the only consistent argument is that the food system requires this, and if we don't do it, your food system collapse. I would say for me, a more fear-based. Yeah. Like, hey, don't ask too much because if not, this will collapse. But I wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, do you feel that it's
too big to fail kind of mentality? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Too big to fail. So how do you feel about that? Do you think the food system in America can't afford to make this change, or do you feel that there could be other solutions?
Well, no, there's definitely other solutions because there are places in the world that doesn't, like, let's just say glyphosate, for example. There are places where it's illegal. So there are definitely other solutions. Now, can you flip us again back to the confidence man thing? Could you flip a switch and tomorrow it's gone? No, because it has been integrated into our system and our practices so much that it would take time to unwind. Now, whether that would be 6 months or 3 years or whatever it would be. But what the issue we have right now isn't that if you pull it out of the system, that everything will fail. It's that the people who are in charge don't want to pull it out of the system. It's a will problem, not a way problem. The way is there. And if we wanted to unwind this, just in the same way that we unwound in the 80s chemicals that, were creating a hole in the ozone, if we wanted to unwind it, we would be able to unwind it. And in fact, we'd still be able to put ourselves in a good situation because of the way technology has evolved over the past 50 years or whatever. So it's the problem that we have is again, a one of will. It's like, we don't want to do it. And so therefore we're going to figure, and then there's people who make a lot of money by us not doing it. So let's get together, the people who don't want to do it, to get together with the people who don't want you to do it, and then have some money change hand. And then we lock ourselves in even more. But if something's too big to fail, also, I've got to say this piece, that's a leadership issue also, because if you're the leader of a government, if you're going to put the government in a good kind of situation, you probably shouldn't have them to be dependent on companies in that way, because then those companies, that's a lot of leverage those companies have over you at that point.
Yeah.
So on multiple levels, that's a complete BS, on multiple levels. But at the same time, what'll end up happening is that people will accept that because it sounds on the surface like, oh, okay, well, we got to deal with this. There's a motivation to accept it because, as opposed to requiring a higher standard from people. For people we like, we tend to want to say, oh, okay, well, I'll just deal with it or whatever. And that's unfortunate because we give people great power. We should hold them to a high standard.
Yeah, no, I agree.
What about you? I mean, what do you think on this?
It's interesting, man. I think that the more I looked into it, it made me appreciate the idea of kind of monopolies and antitrust. Because I started thinking about, when I've gone overseas, every time I go out of this country, the food is just better. I can just taste it. It doesn't have as many preservatives. Doesn't have.
What do you mean by better? And you should explain.
That's what I mean. Not as many preservatives, less processed, more whole foods like fresh greens and vegetables and things like that. And I'll give you an example. Last year.
Hold on. So you'd say better from a texture, from a taste, from a because of it lacks preservatives, for example. Like I find, and then the different things they put in, like they'll take out all the natural stuff and then add a bunch of stuff to try to make it taste natural in the United States a lot of times. And you can taste that difference, where it's like, oh, this is just what it's supposed to taste like, as opposed to
right. And you can taste it stuff. Well, and you can
try to make it taste like that.
Yeah, and you can taste that it's fresher. And look, it's not. I want to be kind of clear here. Not everything's some grand conspiracy. I do believe that the way food developed in the United States after the Depression, the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, was in a more defensive posture. Hey, let's protect the population by having more centralized farms and distribution of food.
And then let's add preservatives so that we can ship it all over the place.
Exactly. That required preservatives so that you could keep it fresh. And that's the thing, like to go overseas, the food actually rots a lot faster. So I think the answer, because it dawned on me again, last year I was the only place I went to outside the United States last year was my trip to Israel. And it's interesting going to Israel. You know, it's in the desert, and, you know, it doesn't have huge forests and all these things. And they have the way they do irrigation. They have small farms around the country, and every food you eat everywhere is fresh. So it's like if a small country like that with a small landmass can afford to have farms in a little bit every corner and this and that, and still get food to their population at any given time, and everyone's healthy and eats well, why can't we? And so that's kind of how I feel about it. And then going back to just finish off the monopoly point, that's where I feel like, even though I say it may not have been sinister how this started, it's kind of like Eisenhower with the military-industrial complex. The military wasn't sinister, it started, but by 1960, when he made that comment, began this fusing of kind of corporate and government interests. And I think the same thing has happened with food, where if you think about it, the monopolies of big farms and big corporations like a Tyson Foods and Mondelez and Fresh Del Monte, there's only about less than a dozen companies that own these massive farms. And so when you talk about the system, they would be the ones fighting, breaking this all up and making much smaller farms that you could have much more entrepreneurial farmers, around the country. People get back to work, all that kind of stuff. And I think, like you said, too big to fail is a great point, because whether it's tech, banking, all that, there's other industries in our country which through lobbying have been able to stamp out competition. And I think this is what's happening now, is the lack of antitrust in recent decades has led to this monopolistic takeover. And here, this whole conversation has been just one example where food, pesticides, and all that, they dominate it, and it's much harder for us, the people, to do anything about it.
Yeah,
so,
That's what I think. It would require unwinding. It would require unwinding. And right now, the snake has us all wound up. So why would it let us unwind
exactly.
it? And that's kind of the issue that we have in that sense. So I don't think it's dishonest for them to say, hey, if we cut this stuff off now, it would mess up our food supply. It would. Like, you would actually have to have some foresight and some planning. You couldn't just close the door or turn the light switch off and it's over.
You mean you can't just do a Doge and just close everything and not?
No, that's the way. Remember, that's the way that con men operate. They promise to be able to just flip the switch and change everything overnight.
Yeah.
And
so I shouldn't wait for my peace dividend and my Doge dividend. All that stuff is not coming. I'm gonna be like these MAHA people, where I'm gonna be disappointed that my money didn't come.
You're putting your faith in a miracle, man, and a miracle delivered by some dude. Not
God, but a dude, not an angel.
So you are running a risk right then and there. And if you open your eyes, you'll realize that you're being taken, for a ride at that moment. Once all these grand promises are made, it's like, there's something.
Listen, once we finish with Iran, the peace dividend's going to be paid. Just going to finish that.
So, but no, man, I think we can wrap this topic from there. But I think it's really unfortunate. Because the ultimate disconnect, though, is where I started, though. It is the disconnect between the people and the power. And now industry between, the people and the power means that, again, it was really saddening to hear you say that at the beginning, talking about how, as you're right, 80% of the people in favor of something. And you and I will be on the phone talking like, well, that doesn't matter. And we'll just say it like that. And it's just like, man, if you stop and think about that, like, well, hold up. This is a democratic system. If 80% of the people agree on anything, that should matter. But the way things are set up right now, it doesn't. And so the intervention has to come somewhere that, where it has to start mattering again what masses and masses and masses and masses of people want and think and care about within the context of the Constitution, is what I would say. And because I don't want to lose sight of that, because there are definitely efforts right now to push that to the side as well. So, but we appreciate everybody for joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Until next time, I'm James Keys.
I'm Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk soon.